Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be redesigning Ayano Aishi, otherwise known as Yandere-chan, from the game Yandere Simulator. I want to start with a disclaimer that I'm not a fan of the game. I haven't been in a few years. I think Yandere dev is generally not a great person, and I don't really support him or his game. I just enjoy watching these sorts of redesign videos, and I wanted to try my hand at one. So getting into it, right off the bat I just wanted to make Yandere-chan generally cuter. I think the major flaw with the concept of the game to begin with is that Ayano isn't actually true to the yandere trope. Yanderes are supposed to be cute until they're very much not. But Ayano is just kind of a bland, emotionless husk, so I definitely wanted my Ayano to show much more emotion and just give off a generally more cute and endearing sort of vibe. So I gave her a shorter hairstyle. I also made her hair more toward a dark brown color rather than black, just to give her a bit of warmth. I also wanted to make her very soft and small looking, like she's quite short and petite, cute little round face, that sort of thing. I also went ahead and changed her uniform, because the uniforms that the characters in the game are portrayed in are actually more like a middle school uniform, which, is kind of weird, honestly. Like fetishizing young schoolgirls and all that. But anyway, I went ahead and drew her in something more like an actual Japanese high school uniform. I tried to keep some of the original color scheme though, with the blue skirt and the red tie. But I gave her a little yellowish vest just because I think vests with school uniforms just look really cute and makes her look kind of softer. You'll notice I also drew her in like a casual after school kind of look. I gave her cat ear headphones, mostly because the top part of the headphones looked a bit awkward and I felt like they needed some height, but I think they look cute. Anyway, I gave her sort of an otaku up at 3 a.m. kind of vibe, because that's part of the new personality I had envisioned for her. So getting into her personality, I honestly really dislike the fact that the entire premise of the actual Yandere-chan character is that she's incapable of emotions except when it comes to senpai. That's not the actual yandere archetype. That's not an actual mental illness. It really just feels like lazy writing and an excuse for the fact that Ayano is just a generic Unity asset with one facial expression. But anyway, in my version, Ayano is actually a pretty kind and thoughtful person by nature. Like, she likes helping people that she cares about and all that. She's just really bad at making friends. Basically, the direction I wanted to take this in is that Yandere-chan and Senpai were childhood friends all through elementary and middle school, and Senpai was actually her only friend, and they lived next door to each other and would walk home from school together and hang out at each other's houses and everything, and they were inseparably close and depended on each other. That actually ties back into another little feature of her design. I gave her a little pink bracelet with a heart on it, and I imagine that Senpai gave that to her when they were kids, and she still wears it. Anyway, since Senpai is her senpai, which literally means an upperclassman, he ends up moving on to high school a year before her, and at the same time Senpai also moves to a different house across town, so they don't see each other anymore, and Yandere-chan is left pretty much entirely alone. So over the course of this year, Yandere-chan kind of withdraws into herself and gets really depressed and lonely. I also imagine she becomes a huge otaku. She stays up all night playing video games and watching edgy anime. Edgy anime, not ecchi anime. Although, I don't know, maybe she watches that too. But anyway, by the time she moves on to high school, she's already totally isolated herself and shut off from everyone else, and she doesn't even try to reconnect with Senpai even though they're at the same school again. Oh, and I think it's worth noting that even though the characters are all stated to be over 18 in the game, in my version I did make them a bit younger, since there's the whole thing with Ayano starting high school a year after Senpai, and that would make them about 15 and 16 respectively. Which, the reason they're all 18 plus in the game is so that they can have panty shots and gross stuff like that, and I'm not going to be sexualizing these characters in any way, so it's okay for them to be younger. Okay, so getting into the actual yandere aspect, I went through a few various possible explanations for why a girl like this would start doing such terrible things, and I decided that rather than try and reconcile her actions with any specific mental illness or anything, the answer is just that she's a teenager. I think every teenager at some point has an angsty murder phase, right? Like, you're just so angry at the world and you hate everyone, and you're just like, oh yeah, murder is cool. I would totally kill people if I had the chance. And of course, no one actually means it, it's just edgy, angsty teenage bullshit. But the thing is that it usually comes from a very real place of negative emotions and still being too young to properly know how to cope with being unhappy. And so when you're a miserable teenager, you think that you're dead serious about this kind of thing. And also, there's just the fact that teenagers generally have a pretty poor impulse control and a poor sense of consequences. So, where I'm going with this is that Yandere-chan is a sad, lonely teenager, and she's really isolated and sheltered and doesn't have a great conception of how the real world works. And she sits alone reading angsty manga and watching angsty anime and playing violent video games. Like, her favorite anime is probably Death Note. And she's like, yeah, I could totally kill someone, that'd be great. And like most teenagers, she's just saying that because she's unhappy, but the idea doesn't really truly occur to her that it's something she would ever actually do in real life. But then one day she's like walking outside somewhere and she sees Senpai getting beaten up by some guy. And I actually do have more context about why Senpai is getting beaten up, but I'll get into that in the video where I redesign him. Anyway, Yandere-chan witnesses this happening, and the guy is just like thrashing Senpai within an inch of his life. Senpai is already passed out, but the dude just keeps going. So Yandere-chan is like, oh shit, I gotta save Senpai, but also she's still in the mindset of, I'd totally be okay with killing someone. So you guessed it, she attacks and kills the guy. And rather than this being the beginning of her like being like, oh, I actually really do like killing people, she's actually incredibly torn up and horrified at what she's done, and she actually kind of has like a mental breakdown. She thinks she's totally evil and irredeemable now, and she's totally ruined her life forever, and she's just completely disgusted and terrified at herself. And then, since she's in this really dark, messed up mindset, she has this thought of like, well, if I'm already irredeemably bad and my life is over anyway, I guess I have no choice but to keep going. Which is obviously bullshit. Like, tell the authorities the dude was attacking Senpai and then get some therapy and everything is fine and dandy. But Ayano is an impulsive, sad teenager, so she's being dramatic and decides that this just means she's a murderer now and that's how it's gonna be. So she basically decides to sacrifice herself by, like, devoting her life to protecting Senpai at any cost. She'll follow him around and try and separate him from anyone she thinks could be somehow bad for him or harmful in any way, which, of course, will include all the rivals. Except in this version, rather than eliminating the rivals to be like, oh, I want Senpai all to myself, this time around it's more like she's trying to, as she sees it, protect him, misguided and fucked up as her efforts may be. And, like, being just a really lost and delusional kid, she does kind of have this hope that maybe one day Senpai will notice everything that she's done for him, and then she can just stop and they can be happy together or whatever. That's basically it for Ayano. I think she looks pretty cute. I'm also planning to redesign Senpai. I already have his sketches done, so please stick around and check out that one as well when it's done. That's all for now. Bye!